Harry did his best not to worry about Sirius over the next couple of weeks. True, he could not stop himself looking anxiously around every morning when the post owls arrived, nor late at night before he went to sleep, prevent himself seeing horrible visions of Sirius, cornered by Dementors, down some dark London street. Between times he tried to keep his mind off his godfather. He wished he still had Quidditch to distract him. Nothing works so well on a troubled mind as a good hard training session. On the other hand, their lessons were becoming more difficult and demanding than ever before, particularly defense against the dark arts. To their surprise, Professor Moody had announced that he would be putting the Imperious Curse on each of them in turn, to demonstrate its power and to see whether or not they could resist its effects. "But you said it's illegal, Professor," said Hermione uncertainly, as Moody cleared away the desks with a sweep of his wand, leaving a large clear space in the middle of the room. "You said to use it against another human was—" "Dumbledore wants you taught what it feels like," said Moody, his magical eyes swiveling onto Hermione and fixing her with an eerie, unblinking stare. "If you'd rather learn the hard way, when someone's putting it on you so they can control you completely, fine by me. You're excused. Off you go." He pointed one snarled finger towards the door. Hermione went very pink and muttered something about not meaning that she'd wanted to leave. Harry and Ron grinned at each other. They knew Hermione would rather eat Bubbletubber pus than miss such an important lesson. Moody began to beckon students forward in turn to put the Imperious Curse onto them. Harry watched as one by one his classmates did the most extraordinary things under its influence. Dean Thomas hopped 3 times around the room singing in the national anthem. Lavender Brown imitated a squirrel. Neville performed a series of quite astonishing gymnastics he would certainly not have been capable of in his normal state. Not one of them seemed to be able to fight the curse off, and each of them recovered only when Moody had removed it. "Potter," Moody growled, "you next." Harry moved forward into the middle of the classroom, into the space that Moody had cleared of the desks. Moody raised his wand, pointed it at Harry, and said, "Imperio." It was the most wonderful feeling. Harry felt a floating sensation as every thought and worry in his mind was wiped gently away, leaving nothing but a vague, untraceable happiness. He stood there, feeling immensely relaxed, only dimly aware of everyone watching him. And then he heard Mad-Eye Moody's voice, echoing in some distant chamber of his empty brain. "Jump onto the desk! Jump onto the desk!" Harry bent his knees obediently, preparing to spring. "Jump onto the desk." "Why, though?" Another voice had awoken in the back of his brain. "Stupid thing to do, really," said the voice. "Jump onto the desk." "No, I don't think I will, thanks," said the other voice, a little more firmly. "No, I don't really want to. Jump, now." The next thing Harry felt was considerable pain. He had both jumped and tried to prevent himself from jumping. The result was that he'd smashed headlong into the desk, knocking it over, and, by the feeling in his legs, fractured both his kneecaps. "Now, that's more like it," growled Moody's voice, and suddenly Harry felt the empty, echoing feeling in his head disappear. He remembered exactly what was happening, and the pain in his knees seemed to double. "Look at that, you lot, Potter fought. He fought it, and he damn near beat it. We'll try it again, Potter, and the rest of you pay attention. Watch his eyes. That's where you see it. Very good, Potter, very good indeed. They'll have trouble controlling you. The way he talks," Harry muttered, as he hobbled out of the Defense Against the Dark Arts class an hour later. Moody had insisted on putting Harry through his paces 4 times in a row until Harry could throw the curse off entirely. "You think we were all about to be attacked any second?" "Yeah, I know," said Ron, who was skipping on every alternate step. He had had much more difficulty with the curse than Harry, though Moody assured him the effects would have worn off by lunchtime. "Talk about paranoid." Ron glanced nervously over his shoulder to check that Moody was definitely out of earshot, and went on, "No wonder they were glad to be shot of him at the Ministry. Did you hear him telling Seamus what he did to that witch who shouted 'boo' behind him on April Fool's Day? And when are we supposed to read up on resisting the Imperious Curse with everything else that we've got to do? All the fourth years had noticed a definite increase in the amount of work they were required to do this term. Professor McGonagall explained why when the class gave a particularly loud groan at the amount of transfiguration homework she had given or had set. You are now entering a most important phase of your magical education, she told them. Her eyes glinting dangerously behind her square spectacles. Your ordinary wizarding levels are drawing closer. We don't take owls till fifth year, said Dean Thomas indignantly. Maybe not, Thomas, but believe me, you need all the preparation you can get. Miss Granger remains the only person in this class who has managed to turn a hedgehog into a satisfactory pincushion. I might remind you that your pincushion, Thomas, still curls up in fright if anyone approaches it with a pin. Hermione, who had turned rather pink again, seemed to be trying not to look too pleased with herself. Harry and Ron were deeply amused when Professor Trelawney told them that they had received top marks for their homework in their next divination class. She read out large portions of their predictions, commending them for their unflinching acceptance of the horrors in store for them. But they were less amused when she asked them to do the same thing for the month after next. Both of them were running out of ideas for catastrophes. Meanwhile, Professor Binns, the ghost who taught history of magic, had them writing weekly essays on the goblin rebellions of the 18th century. Professor Snape was forcing them to research antidotes. They took this seriously, as he had hinted that he might be poisoning one of them before Christmas to see if their antidote worked. Professor Flitwick had asked them to read 3 extra books in preparation for their lesson on summoning charms. Even Hagrid was adding to their workload. The blast-ended Scroots were growing at a remarkable pace, given that nobody had yet discovered what they ate. Hagrid was delighted, and as part of their project suggested they come down to his hut on alternate evenings to observe the Scroots and make notes on their extraordinary behavior. I will not, said Draco Malfoy flatly, when Hagrid had proposed this with the air of a Father Christmas pulling on an extra large toy out of a sack. I see enough of these foul things during lessons, thanks. Hagrid's smile faded from his face. You'll do what you're told, he growled, or I'll be taking a leaf out of Professor Moody's book. I hear you made a good ferret, Malfoy. The Gryffindors roared with laughter, and Malfoy flushed with anger. But apparently the memory of Moody's punishment was still sufficiently painful to stop him retorting. Harry, Ron, and Hermione returned to the castle at the end of the lesson in high spirits. Seeing Hagrid put down Malfoy was particularly satisfying, especially because Malfoy had done his very best to get Hagrid sacked the previous year. When they arrived in the entrance hall, they found themselves unable to proceed owing to the large crowd of students congregating there, all milling around a large sign which had been erected at the foot of the marble staircase. Ron, the tallest of the 3, stood on tippy-toes to see over the heads in front of them and read the sign aloud to the other 2. Troy Wizarding Tournament. The delegations for Beauxbaxton and Dumstrang will be arriving at 6 o'clock on Friday the 30th of October. Lessons will end half an hour early. Brilliant, said Harry. It's potions lasting on Friday. Snape won't have time to poison us all. Students will bring their bags and books to the dormitories and assemble in front of the castle to greet our guests before the welcoming feast. Only a week away, said Ernie Macmillan of Hufflepuff, emerging from the crowd, his eyes gleaming. I wonder if Cedric knows. Think I'll go and tell him. Cedric, said Ron blankly, as Ernie hurried off. Diggory, said Harry. He must be entering the tournament. That idiot, Hogwarts champion, said Ron. as they pushed their way through the chattering crowd towards the staircase. "He's not an idiot. You just don't like him because he beat Gryffindor at Quidditch," said Hermione. "I've heard it. He's really a good student, and he's a prefect." She spoke as though this settled the matter. "You only like him because he's handsome," said Ron scathingly. "Excuse me, I don't like people just because they're handsome," said Hermione indignantly. Ron gave a loud false cough, which sounded oddly like Lockhart. The appearance of the sign in the entrance hall had a marked effect upon the inhabitants of the castle. During the following week, there seemed to be only one topic of conversation. No matter where Harry went, the Triwizarding Tournament. Rumors were flying from student to student like highly contagious germs. Who was going to try for Hogwarts champion? What the tournament would involve? How the students from Beauxbaton and Durmstrang differed from themselves. Harry noticed, too, that the castle seemed to be undergoing an extra thorough cleaning. Several grimy portraits had been scrubbed, much to the displeasure of their subjects, who sat huddled in their frames, muttering darkly and wincing as they felt their raw pink faces.